Hello, my name's Beck Tench, and I am a PhD student at the University of Washington in the Information School. And I am currently studying for something called the General Exam, and it's basically our comprehensive exam. That different universities call this portion different things, and they actually maybe are different for different universities, especially for something like the Information School, where there's no canon of literature that you just need to know and everybody knows it, but rather it's very interdisciplinary and people may be studying various different things. This is basically a literature review of the specific conversations and literature around the topic that you're focusing on, which may be very different than anyone else at the school. That isn't always the case, but it's the case for me. So I'm doing this literature review, and it's the first time I've ever really done anything this comprehensive or deep in terms of actually exploring the conversation around a given topic. And so I thought that I would share a bit of my process because one of the things that I really want is for everyone who's doing this sort of work to share how they do it. At least for me, I have, a ton of models and experience as a designer having a process. I know the design process and I get to trust the design process. And even if I'm throwing some really gnarly problem, I can apply the process to that problem and get somewhere reliably. It's something that I kind of just have with me after years of being a designer. And I am entering this scholarly realm, and I want an academic, a scholarly process. And when you're looking at design processes, there are tons of people that will share what they do. There's entire, it's very easy to basically discover how to design, but I haven't found that it's very easy to discover how to do research necessarily. There's lots of articles and books and all that kind of stuff about research and process in that way, but you don't hear it from just regular folks who are struggling through trying to follow some of these methods and the actual discovery part, and even more than that, the remembering what you've discovered and recalling it at the times when you need to recall it, or connecting ideas across discoveries, is really a big deal, very big part of the work, and I don't know how others really do it. So I'm going to go through sort of what I've learned to do so far, document my process, see how it changes over time. I'm brand new at this, and share it so that others can learn from it and maybe will be encouraged to share theirs as well. This will be very bumbly because I'm just going to videotape it in one take. I don't really have the time or patience to be very polished about this. And honestly, it's not a very polished thing, so that would be misrepresenting it. So I have a few tools that I'm using right now, and this is after months of really trying a lot of different things and reading about different methods. So my tools are, I use an Apple iPad Pro to read on, basically. It's occasionally, of course, I'll be reading an actual book or an ebook, but as much as possible, I try to get my reading materials as PDFs, and I put them in the app GoodNotes, and I highlight in GoodNotes. So this is an article that I read last week, and you'll see these are my highlights. The colors have meaning, and every once in a while I'll make some annotations, but really what I'm doing in GoodNotes is highlighting and then uploading the highlighted version to my reference management software, which is PaperPile. And I like PaperPile because the interface is very nice, and I used Google Docs to write, so it works well with Google Docs, but there are drawbacks to it as well. Every time that I am reading, I also am making notes in a paper notebook. So I read some advice once, always read with a pen in your hand, and that's what I am doing. So, for example, as I read, looking for, okay, so this is actually the article I just showed you. These are some notes from that article, and as I'm reading them, as I'm reading the article, I will write notes, and I'll put a dot beside each note. You'll see that they look actually like X's, or this one looks like a little carrot, but they started as dots. And I use the bullet journal notation of dots, which are basically tasks, um, to help myself remember that I had an insight while I was reading. So, for example, one of the insights is um, aesthetic response equals do you like something or not. So there's this language that this author was using, aesthetic response, and I wanted to put it in my own language, which is do you like it or do you not like it? That's how I understood this author to mean what aesthetic response meant. So I wanted to note that so much that I'm going to put it in my notes. This is not my notes. This is just a working document while I'm reading that I write down things that I want to later really synthesize. So first it started as a dot, and then I ended up putting that in my note-taking system, which I'll show in a minute, and then I cross it off like you do in bullet journal. And if I don't end up doing something with it, you'll see this one here. It says Appleton 1975, Aesthetics and Survival. This is something that I want to read in the future, and I haven't read it yet, but I did put it in my task management software, which is OmniFocus. And so when I put it in OmniFocus, it gets a little up caret arrow thing so that I know that it's being managed by a different system. I don't need to worry about it on this piece of paper. So that's the first part of the system, is basically reading mostly on an iPad, highlighting key things, but really using my annotations as this temporary, almost short-term memory space of a piece of paper that will later go into software that I use to collect my notes. And right now, the software that I'm using to do that is Tinderbox. So I'm going to stop the video now and create another video that is about how I use these written notes in Tinderbox and how I'm organizing Tinderbox to basically hold all of the insights and things that I'm wanting to write down about what I'm learning.